March 1st is approaching, and when that day arrives, something that has been predicted for decades may finally come to pass. An ancient prophecy, buried in time and kept secret by those who feared its revelation, seems to be on the verge of becoming reality. And at the center of this mystery is one of the most enigmatic figures in modern history, a man whose very existence defied logic, science, and faith itself. Before we begin, I need to warn you. What you are about to hear may change your view of the future. Father Pio predicted terrifying events, and now, everything seems to be happening. Economic collapse, political division, rising violence, and mysterious signs in the sky. But the most concerning thing is that he left a final warning. There is a specific event that would mark the point of no return, and the signs are already emerging, but almost no one notices. If this prophecy is correct, time is running out. Stay until the end to understand what's coming, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to follow more revelations about what might be happening around us. We are talking about Padre Pio, a priest who bore inexplicable marks on his body, and whose words echoed beyond his time. He was not an ordinary man. Since he was young, he showed signs of something that few understood. His hands bled without visible wounds. His prayers seemed to transcend the barriers of the physical world, and his presence left those around him with an unsettling feeling that they were in the presence of something beyond human comprehension. But it was his prophecies that truly made him a figure surrounded by fear and respect. He spoke of events that had not yet occurred, described moments of destruction with terrifying details, and above all, left a warning that seems to be pointing directly at the United States. The question now is, what did he see? His accounts describe a time when the world would fall into chaos, faith would be abandoned, and humanity would face an unprecedented crisis. But he went further. He mentioned a specific country that would lead this transition into darkness, a once strong and prosperous nation, but which would little by little turn against itself, plunging into internal conflicts, economic destruction, and a war that no one could avoid. If you are here, it is because you feel that something is not right. Things don't seem normal. The world is changing. And if Padre Pio was right, what comes next will be much worse than we can imagine. In the next few minutes, we will analyze the darkest predictions ever made and how they are coming true right before our eyes. If you want to know what is really happening, stay with me until the end, because what we are going to reveal could change your view on the future of humanity. The words of Padre Pio echo like a grim warning: destruction, chaos, and unimaginable suffering. He described devastating wars, but warned that the real danger was yet to come. Something not caused merely by weapons, but by the decay of humanity. Today, we see the world reflecting its warnings. Empty churches, destroyed moral values, and a society increasingly distant from God. What was sacred is now ridiculed. Spiritual corruption spreads like never before. But that wasn't the only thing he predicted. He warned about the earth itself turning against humanity. And aren't we seeing exactly that? Record hurricanes, violent fires, devastating earthquakes, and unexplained climate changes. Scientists try to rationalize, but the signs are everywhere. And then comes their most feared prophecy, the 3 days of darkness. Padre Pio predicted that the sun and the moon would disappear, plunging the world into absolute darkness. No light would work. The electricity would fail. The air would become lethal, and those who dared to go out would not survive. But the worst was yet to come. Demonic entities would roam the streets, dragging the unsuspecting to a fate worse than death. He warned that screams of despair would echo through the cities, and that the only protection would be to lock oneself inside, praying without ceasing. He warned, don't look outside. Windows and doors should be covered, for anyone who saw what was happening outside would die instantly. And there was an even more terrifying detail. Only blessed candles would give light. Previously ridiculed, this prophecy now resonates with a disturbing urgency. Global conflicts, rising violence, and a planet on the brink of collapse. But the most frightening? Father Pio suggested that this event would not affect all nations in the same way. And the question that no one wants to answer is, which country will suffer the worst consequences? Some nations would suffer more than others, and many believe that Padre Pio directed his warning specifically to the United States. He predicted unmistakable signs before the 3 days of darkness, a final warning for those who were attentive. He spoke of a world plunged into chaos, where morality would crumble, violence would increase, and nature itself would punish humanity. If we analyze the current world, your words become even more unsettling. One of the greatest warnings was a devastating global crisis. He described relentless financial instability, collapsing governments, and entire populations plunged into despair. Today, inflation, inequality, and economic collapse are already affecting millions. Could we be living the beginning of this prophecy? Another shocking revelation was the increase in violence and insecurity. He spoke of a time when crime would become uncontrollable, with people fearing to go out on the streets. In the United States, crime is on the rise, with mass shootings, riots, and an increasingly divided society. Would this be the anarchy he predicted? Moreover, he warned that the earth would respond with fury. Earthquakes, hurricanes, fires, and floods would strike with unprecedented force. Currently, the world is witnessing record natural disasters, inexplicable climate anomalies, and storms more destructive than ever. But the most frightening thing is that Padre Pio made it clear that these signs were just the beginning. When all these calamities occurred at the same time, it would be the last warning before the darkness. If this is already happening, how much time do we have left? Father Pio suggested that some nations would face the worst consequences, and the United States seems to be at the center of this prophecy. But why? He described a powerful and influential country, but one that would rot from within. A nation obsessed with materialism, where faith would be rejected and morality abandoned. And isn't that exactly what we're seeing today? What was once a country guided by spiritual values is now drifting further and further away from God. Political divisions, the economic crisis, and corruption align alarmingly with the warnings of Padre Pio. If he was right about everything he predicted before, what comes now? If Padre Pio's warnings continue to come true, then the most important question remains: what comes next? Besides the moral decay, he made a terrible warning about the extreme political division. He foresaw a nation that would turn against itself, where trust would be lost not only in leaders but among neighbors, friends, and even family members. Today, the United States is more polarized than ever. The social chaos, ideological battles, and growing distrust fuel tensions that seem impossible to resolve. Is this the collapse he predicted? Perhaps the most frightening aspect of his prophecy was his belief that this powerful nation would face an inevitable choice: redemption or ruin. The fate of the world would depend on the response to this moment of reckoning. But have the United States already sealed their fate? Or is there still time to change course? The visions of Padre Pio described a world in moral collapse, where faith, family, and fundamental values would be destroyed. He warned of a time when spirituality would be ridiculed, traditions discarded, and the moral compass of society would cease to exist. If we look at the United States today, this prediction seems frighteningly accurate. He warned that the destruction of civilization would begin with the ruin of its ethics. An era where good and evil would become indistinguishable, where selfishness, greed, and uncontrolled pleasure would take the place of humility, discipline, and faith. Modern society exalts materialism and instant self-satisfaction, while spiritual values are discarded. Padre Pio also predicted an unprecedented decline in faith. The United States, once known for its deep religious roots, now sees churches closing, religious leaders being ridiculed, and Christian values being erased from society. The push for a secular society grows every day, fueling the idea that this is the era of the final distancing from God, a preparation for an inevitable divine judgment. But his prophecy did not stop at the loss of faith. He described a complete breakdown of social order. He spoke of a time when crime would increase, families would disintegrate, and millions would lose their sense of purpose. Could this be the chaos that Padre Pio predicted? The slow and tragic collapse of a society that was once grand? But he didn't just talk about destruction. He suggested that those who recognized the signs and returned to faith could still find protection. Have the United States already crossed the point of no return? Or is there still time to change course? His warnings were not limited to internal decay, but also predicted an era of unprecedented global conflict. Padre Pio described a time of wars on all continents, with powerful nations colliding and tensions pushing humanity to the brink. Today, the United States is at the center of a growing geopolitical upheaval, and the question that echoes is, are we witnessing the beginning of this prophecy? For decades, the USA has played a dominant role in global politics, but international relations have never been so unstable. Military conflicts are increasing, alliances are crumbling, and economic warfare threatens global stability. Padre Pio warned that, before the final adjustment, nations would engage in physical and ideological battles. With tensions between the United States, China, and Russia increasing, their warnings seemed to be coming true. He also warned that internal struggles would grow alongside global conflicts. A divided nation would be easier to destroy, and the USA has never been so fragmented. Confidence in the government has crumbled, protests are multiplying, and ideological battles have taken over society. Is this the internal collapse he predicted? Another frightening part of his prophecy was about the nature of future war. He spoke of new weapons of destruction, of attacks coming from the skies, and of battles fought in ways never seen before. Today, with the advancement of nuclear weapons, cyber warfare, and space technology, this vision has never been more real. If your predictions are coming true, then these growing global tensions are not mere political conflicts. They are signs of something much greater. And if the United States is not just a participant, but the catalyst that will unleash chaos, the only question that remains is, how much time do we have left before everything falls apart? The prophecies of Padre Pio did not stop at war and moral collapse. He spoke of signs in the heavens that would serve as warnings for those who paid attention. And if these signs are already happening, what comes next could change the course of history forever. Could these be the signs predicted by Padre Pio? In recent years, sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena (UAPs) have increased dramatically. Even the United States government has admitted the existence of flying objects that defy all scientific logic. Military pilots have reported encounters with ships performing impossible maneuvers, surpassing any known technology. Could they be just secret projects or signs of something much bigger? In addition to these mysteries, strange sounds resembling celestial trumpets have been heard around the world, including in the United States. These sounds echo descriptions found in ancient religious texts about the end of times. Could these be the warning trumpets mentioned by Padre Pio? At the same time, extreme celestial events are intensifying. Giant solar eruptions threaten satellites and power grids, while scientists warn of geomagnetic storms capable of paralyzing the entire global infrastructure. Unexpected meteors, anomalous eclipses, and strange lights in the sky have left many wondering, is the universe trying to warn us? If Padre Pio's predictions are correct, the world is ignoring urgent signs. But his most alarming warning was not about the sky, but about the financial collapse that would lead to global chaos. He spoke of a time when money would lose its value, banks would go bankrupt overnight, and millions would be left without resources. Given the current economic instability in the US, this prophecy seems frighteningly close to reality. Out-of-control inflation, astronomical national debt, and the growing threat of a banking crisis indicate that something much bigger may be about to happen. The American dollar, once the dominant currency in the world, now faces increasing competition as nations seek alternatives to the traditional financial system. Could this be the beginning of the collapse that Padre Pio predicted? He also warned about the food shortage, describing empty shelves, widespread hunger, and the struggle for survival. Today, Global supply chains are increasingly fragile, and food prices have reached historic levels. If your prophecy is true, the worst is yet to come. He predicted a world where financial control would become a tool of oppression, a system in which people would be entirely dependent on the digital economy, vulnerable to absolute control. Today, with digital currencies, cashless transactions, and centralized banks dominating the global system, this prophecy is closer than ever. If a financial collapse really occurs, millions of Americans could lose everything overnight. But this crisis will not be just economic. Father Pio warned that this collapse would be a survival test, where the unprepared would suffer the worst consequences. The warnings have already begun. But is the world listening? His prophecies were never just to instill fear, but to prepare those willing to listen. He spoke of a world divided between nations that would be destroyed and others that would undergo trials to be purified. The United States would be at the center of this test. Padre Pio described a rich and powerful nation that would go through an era of extreme suffering. Financial collapse, natural disasters, violence, war. But within that darkness, there would be an opportunity for redemption. The USA was founded on principles of faith, but over time it has distanced itself from those values. Father Pio warned that when a nation abandons God, it brings destruction upon itself. The question now is, will this crisis be a call to repentance or a point of no return? He described two possible futures. If the people recognize the signs and return to faith, there may be renewal. If they ignore the warnings, the suffering will lead to total destruction. Padre Pio spoke of cities reduced to ashes, of a time of anarchy and chaos, where leaders would completely lose control. This would mark the final judgment. The big question remains, do the United States still have time to change course? Or has the opportunity for redemption already been lost? If this prophecy is true, it will not only affect the USA, but the fate of the entire world. Time is running out. He described a future where societies would be destroyed by political struggles, moral decay, and the total erosion of trust among citizens. Looking at the United States today, his words sound chillingly prophetic. The country has never been so divided. Political tensions exploded, pitting brothers, friends, and entire communities against each other. The debate is no longer about ideas, but about hostility. Protests turn violent. Trust in government institutions has reached the lowest level in modern history. Father Pio warned that this internal division was a clear sign of an imminent collapse. He described a time when the government would lose control, anarchy would take over, and society would collapse morally. Crime is growing uncontrollably in big cities, leaving people afraid. The justice system seems politicized, and corruption spreads through all levels of power. But this crisis wouldn't be just political. Padre Pio warned about the collapse of morality. He spoke of a world where the truth would be distorted, lies exalted, and power would become the sole objective of society. Does it sound familiar? Today, religious values are ridiculed, extreme ideologies dominate, and the relentless pursuit of money and status has replaced moral principles. This, he said, would be the final choice. Would the United States seek redemption or continue on its path to destruction? Father Pio stated that the greatest danger to any civilization was not war, the economy, or natural disasters, but the abandonment of faith. A nation that rejects God condemns itself to suffering. And now, faith in the USA is crumbling. Churches are closing, religious figures are being ridiculed, and Christian principles are being erased from culture. More people than ever have abandoned God, choosing a life of secularism and materialism. Father Pio warned that this spiritual decline was the final warning before chaos. But his message was not one of despair. Rather, it was one of hope. The question now is, will the United States wake up before it's too late? Padre Pio insisted that, even in the darkest moments, those who sought faith could still find salvation. He urged people to pray, strengthen their spirits, and prepare for the trials that were to come. He spoke of divine protection for those who remained steadfast. even when the world around them collapsed. Today, a spiritual battle is taking place in the United States. While many distance themselves from religion, there are others who urgently seek faith. Society pursues wealth, power, and pleasure, but an increasing number of people realize the emptiness that this leaves. This could be the turning point. Will the United States return to its spiritual roots, or continue on the path of decline? If Padre Pio's prophecy is correct, redemption is still possible, but the window for change is closing rapidly. The question is, will the nation awaken in time, or cross the point of no return? Among all his visions, one of the most unsettling involved signs in the sky before the final tribulation. He predicted that, when the moment of judgment was near, something extraordinary would happen in the heavens. An event so evident that no one could ignore it, but few would understand its true meaning. Has this already started? In recent years, reports of mysterious phenomena in the skies have increased dramatically. Father Pio described bright lights, inexplicable movements among the stars, and even abnormal behavior of the sun and the moon. Today, scientists are recording massive solar storms, unexpected changes in planetary activity, and strange bursts of light in the sky. The U.S. government itself has acknowledged an increase in unidentified aerial phenomena, objects that defy the laws of physics. Would these be the prophesied signs? Even more concerning was his warning that this phenomenon would mark the beginning of an era of darkness. Padre Pio warned to observe the skies, for they would reveal the moment of divine intervention. But not everyone would recognize the signs. He predicted that many would attribute these events to science, ignoring what they really are: urgent warnings from the divine. If this prophecy is correct, time is running out. The question is no longer whether the warnings are happening, but whether humanity will see them before it's too late. The words of Padre Pio were not just grim warnings, but a call to preparation and spiritual awakening. He believed that those who understood the signs could find refuge in faith and truth. The fate of the United States, and the world, may still not be sealed, but the window of opportunity is closing rapidly. His warnings were not meant to instill fear, but to prepare those who wish to understand the times they live in. The moral collapse, rampant corruption, imminent wars, and inexplicable phenomena in the skies are more than mere coincidences. They are part of a grand plan unfolding, exactly as he predicted. Now the question that remains is, will people recognize the signs before it's too late? The prophecy offers us a choice: ignore it and continue down the path of ruin, or awaken, seek the truth, and strengthen ourselves before the final storm. If today's events are the realization of your visions, then the time to act is now. Those who prepare spiritually, who return to faith, and who see beyond the distractions of the world, will have the chance to withstand what is to come. The destiny of nations may already be set, but the destiny of each individual can still be written. And you? Are you ready for what's coming next?